Yo, what is good, everyone, and welcome back to the Mayo Media Network. My name's Griffin Swanson, and today I'm here to break down the Thursday night football game between the Los Angeles Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. Got a couple of prize picks that I like for this game, and then we're going to dive into my spreadsheet, breaking down that DraftKings Showdown slate. But before we do that, don't forget to smash that like button to this video and subscribe to the Mayo Media Network. They got football content coming out Monday through Sunday, all season long, and you don't want to miss out on any of that. For you podcast people, you can head on over to the Apple Pods or Spotify and find all the content there. But let's go ahead and dive into this Thursday night game, kicking it off with a couple of prize picks that I like. So I'm over on the PrizePicks.com website here now. For those of you who have not signed up for PrizePicks and you want to do so, make sure you use code MMN upon sign up for up to a $100 match deposit. So it's basically house money, free money that you're playing with right off the bat. And the nice thing about PrizePicks, as soon as you put your deposit in, they match that right away. You don't have to play a bunch of contests, earn it back as kind of a bonus like some of these other DFS sites. Now you'll get that house money right off the bat. Again, just make sure you use code MMN. Now, I got my eye on two different picks here for this Thursday night game, but you can see here there's a lot of different props that we can pick from, and you can even go over to this fantasy score if you'd like to as well and play it as such. But I have my eye on two receiving props this week. The first probably comes as no surprise here, taking the over on Cooper Kupp at 84.5 receiving yards. Yeah, he had kind of a dud week last week, but he still saw 13 targets in that game, 64 receiving yards. Prior to that, he had 108, 163, and 96 receiving yards throughout the first three games. This guy has seen at least 10 targets throughout the first four games, and the chemistry is very real between him and Matthew Stafford. We got this whole breakfast narrative that they had all offseason, getting breakfast with each other every morning, and that's seeming to pay dividends here early on in the season. And on top of all of that, I mean, the volume is just incredible, but this secondary for the Seattle Seahawks is just not very good. I'll touch on that more in the spreadsheet, but I like the over here at 84.5 receiving yards. Think Cooper Kupp gets there on Thursday night. And then the other receiving I prop is right there as well. I'm going to take the under on Chris Carson at 13.5 receiving yards. This guy has been quite disappointing to start the year, to say the least. He has punched in 3 touchdowns on the ground, but outside of that, it really hasn't been all that impressive, especially through the passing game. This guy really hasn't been notorious for catching a bunch of passes and getting a bunch of targets in this offense anyway, but now he's starting to split carries with Alex Collins a little bit, or at least he did in week 4. I'll touch on that in the spreadsheet as well, but here are the targets that Carson has seen throughout the first 4 weeks. He had 3 in week 1. He did have 3 catches as well for 26 receiving yards. So that's the only time he's hit the over all season long. Week 2, he had 0 targets, obviously 0 catches. Week 3, he had 2 targets. He had 2 catches in that game, but it went for 2 yards total. And then last week, he had 1 target, 1 reception, and went for 1 yard. This guy just does not get involved in the passing game. He's kind of battling a bit of a neck injury too. I suspect he will play, which will even bode better for us taking the under on this receiving prop. I know taking the under isn't fun, but I do believe that this one makes sense. So to recap here, going to take the over on Cooper Kupp at 84.5 receiving yards, take the under on Chris Carson at 13.5 receiving yards, and again, we can approach this 2 different ways. We can go with the flex play here or the power play. If you go the route of the power play, you will need both of your picks to hit, or all of your picks depending on how many you play, but it does increase the payout. Now again, for those of you who do want to sign up for PrizePicks, make sure you use code MMN upon sign up for up to a $100 match deposit. It is legit free money, so make sure you take advantage of that. Well, let's hop into the spreadsheet here and break down that DraftKings Showdown slate. Now, as always, going to kick things off here in the top left-hand corner with these Vegas odds for Thursday night. You can see here the Rams are favored to win on the road with a money line of -140 and a -2.5 point spread. You can see the over-under there is at 55 points too. Definitely projecting to be a shootout in this game. Both of these offenses know how to put up points on the scoreboard. That Seattle defense is not very good, and as much talent as there is on that Rams defense, we've seen them a bit susceptible at times throughout the first 4 games as well. well. So I think there will be a lot of points scored in this game. And then I got those showdown stats here from 2020 when it comes to making the most optimal showdown lineups. Let's hop on over to this other sheet here and go through these pretty quickly, but take a screenshot of them, do whatever you want. I just want to go over these in regards to the top 1% of lineups from last year. So number one there, 92% of all showdown lineups rostered at least one quarterback, and of the top 1% of lineups, 96% had a quarterback rostered as well. Number two, 33% of all lineups rostered a wide receiver at captain, and of the top 1% of lineups, 31.4% had a wide receiver captain as well. Number three, 57% of the top 1% lineups rostered a captain from the team favored to win. So in this Thursday night game, the Rams. Number four, run it back. An opposing quarterback, wide receiver, or tight end was included in 88.9% of winning lineups that rostered a quarterback, wide receiver, or tight end from the other team at captain. Number five, ignore defense and kickers in the captain spot. Very rarely does that work. Only 1.1% of the time last year in the top 1% of lineups. And the last one there, do not play more than two kickers or defenses in the same lineup. Usually one is fine, especially in a game like this that is projecting to be a shootout. You know, there can be some miscues. You can see defensive touchdowns in shootouts like this, but very rarely is a defense going to rack up a bunch of points that has an over-under of 55 points. So those are the 6 stats from last year when it comes to the top 1% of lineups and making optimal NFL showdown lineups. But all right, let's dive into my favorite plays here for this showdown, kicking it off with the captains. Now, as y'all know, I always list out a captain from both sides of this game. Starting there with the Rams side, gonna go with Cooper Kupp. I mean, how do we not talk about this guy in the captain spot? Just completely dominated to start the year. Like I said, he kind of had a down week last week, but still had 11 DraftKings points, hit double-digit DraftKings points in every single game so far this year. If we just run through his list here, had 26.8 in week 1, 39.8 in week 2, just an incredible ceiling, 30.6 in week 3, and then last week 11.4. He damn near leads the team in every statistical category. Target share 35%, air yards 33%. He's got 5 touchdowns and 35 receptions throughout 4 weeks. This guy's almost averaging 10 receptions a game through 4 weeks. That's incredible. And he's seen at least 10 targets in every single game so far this year as well. 10, 11, 12, and 13 actually over the first 4 weeks. So yes, he's the most expensive player on this slate here. Maybe that will garner a little less ownership. I highly doubt it. But again, how do we not talk about this guy in the captain spot? And then on the Seattle side here, I went with Tyler Lockett. Now, I'd love to highlight Chris Carson here, but as I mentioned in the PrizePicks section, he just has not impressed so far this year. Now he's battling that neck injury. I suspect he will play, but I'm just not very high on him heading into this matchup. But the one area the Rams defense has really kind of struggled against is stopping the run. So that's why I like Chris Carson. You know, maybe if we do get word that Pete Carroll's going to go back to his old ways this week and hammer the rock 25 plus times, maybe we consider him once again. I just don't know if I can go there as of right now. So I'm going to highlight Tyler Lockett here. He should avoid Jalen Ramsey for the most part in this game. I suspect we'll see Ramsey on DK as much as possible. Now, that doesn't mean that Lockett has a good matchup here because Darius Williams is a legit cornerback as well. But Lockett has a really nice ceiling score. We really kind of saw that in the first 2 weeks where he just exploded for 30 plus DraftKings points, had 29 in week 1, but 34.8 in week 2. That's the upside that he has. Now, that's not to say that DK doesn't have that upside, because he does, just a little tougher matchup against Jalen Ramsey. I'll touch on that with DK when I go into the flex plays. But yeah, this is where I kind of pivoted to, considering I just don't know if I can trust Carson this week. I think Lockett's upside in this matchup is still good enough to where we can put him in the captain spot. Now, hopping on down here to the flex plays, honestly, I almost talked about Russ Wilson in the captain spot as well, but considering him and Cooper Kupp are the 2 most expensive players on this slate, I wanted to get a little different with Tyler Lockett, but by all means, I think Russ is a captain play as well. And it might be one of those games where we need to see him use his legs and rushing ability a little bit more, especially considering how good those cornerbacks are for the Rams and how banged up Chris Carson is heading into this matchup, or at least how mediocre he's been, to say the least. And Russ has the potential to go for 30 plus DraftKings points. He does have the weapons to throw to. I'm hoping that Gerald Everett is going to be back, who I have highlighted below. Did miss last week due to COVID. Again, I'll touch on that later in this video. But Russ has enough surrounding him to make plays, but also has tremendous rushing upside too. So I don't mind him here in the captain spot or as a flex play. Again, I go back to this first stat from last year. 92% of all showdown lineups rostered at least one quarterback, and 96% of the top 1% of lineups did as well. So it's almost inevitable that you're going to have one of Russell Wilson or Matthew Stafford in your showdown lineup. And speaking of Matthew Stafford here, I by all means think you could put him in the captain spot too. I certainly prefer Cooper Kupp. He's got a higher ceiling, but Stafford should be able to pick apart this Seattle secondary. Not a lot going on there outside of Jamal Adams. They're allowing 292 passing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks, the 5th most in the NFL. They're also allowing 24 DraftKings points per game to opposing QBs, something Matthew Stafford can definitely accomplish and probably exceed that. There's a number of different weapons that you can stack them up with. Cooper Kupp, obviously, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee, Van Jefferson, or even someone like Deshaun Jackson who can score a long touchdown. So I prefer Cooper Kupp, but think you could put Stafford in the captain spot. I just prefer him more as a flex play. And then we got DK Metcalf there. Now look, I think we all know this. He's going to have a tough matchup in this game against Jalen Ramsey. Wouldn't be surprised if we see Ramsey kind of follow him around and shadow him in this game. We've seen that in the past. And DK kind of struggled during the regular season last year against this defense. However, he did have a solid game in the playoffs against the Rams, had 5 catches, 96 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns in that game. So this guy is athletic enough, he's fast enough to where he can win that matchup at times, but it's not something I'm banking on snap after snap or target after target. Jalen Ramsey is going to get his, but I think we can still play DK Metcalf. I don't know if I want to go there in the captain spot, and that's hard for me to say because DK Metcalf has a tremendous ceiling more games than not. I just don't know if this is one of those games, but I think you'll see him used in the captain spot by some lineups for sure. Again, I just don't know if I'm going to go there. Next, we got the Rams running back there, Darrell Henderson. Great matchup here against the Seattle defense. Think you could use him in the captain spot as kind of a mid-price guy, if you will, but as bad as that Seattle defense has been at stopping the pass, they've been even worse at stopping the run, allowing 152 rushing yards per game, the most in the NFL. Now, he is kind of battling a rib injury. We saw him miss week 3 due to that, but got back on track last week and has played pretty solid in all 3 starts this year. He's got 15.7, 17.2, and 16.6 DraftKings points, getting a little bit more involved over the past 2 games in the passing game as well. Saw 5 and 6 targets over the past 2. I wish he did get a little more volume when it comes to rushing attempts. Saw 16 in week 1, 13 in week 2, missed week 3, and then had 14 last week. I wish that number was in the higher teens or even close to 20, but enough to work with here, especially against this defense. Again, I prefer more as a flex play, but if you're looking for kind of a mid-priced option, he's probably my favorite at 8.4K. And then we got 2 more pass catchers here for the Rams. Tyler Higbee, the tight end, and one of their deep threats, Van Jefferson. Look, Deshaun Jackson is in play too. I just prefer Van Jefferson because he's playing a lot more offensive snaps, and volume is key for me. But Tyler Higbee here, let's touch on him first. Has the 3rd most targets on the team with 18, the 2nd most receptions, only behind Cooper Kupp. He's been really solid after the catch though. 99 of his 152 receiving yards this year have come after the catch. So that was really intriguing to me. A guy they will use in the red zone too, can catch touchdowns, and at 5.6K, I certainly don't mind this matchup here against the Seattle Seahawks. Van Jefferson, same thing, obviously a great matchup against that secondary, but he's got that deep threat ability. We saw it back in week 1 when he scored that 67-yard touchdown. And then we're going to wrap it up there with 3 guys on the Seattle side, starting with Freddie Swain, the number 3 wide receiver in this Seattle offense. You know, with all the attention on Lockett and DK this week, I like Freddie Swain at 4.6K. I actually just went and saw one of the quotes from the defensive coordinator for the Rams, and he flat out said, expect Ramsey to be on DK in this matchup, expect Darius Williams to be on Lockett. So those guys are going to be pretty much locked in, which should lead Swain here to David Long. Now, David Long is no slouch by any means, but it's certainly the best of the 3 wide receiver cornerback matchups in this game. And just like Van Jefferson, Wilson as the number 3 wide receiver in this offense. Swain's playing a pretty legit amount of snaps, 62% of the offensive snaps through 4 weeks. So if you kind of want to pivot away from what should be pretty chalky in Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, I really like Freddie Swain here, and he's a good price tag as well. So if you want to roll out Russell Wilson, this could be a low-priced option to stack him up with. And the same thing here with Gerald Everett. Now again, he did miss last week due to having COVID. However, he did have his first negative test on Monday, so he just needs one more negative test in order to play on Thursday. I suspect we will see him play, but keep an eye on that, especially if you're setting your lineups early. You don't want to start a guy here who's out due to having COVID. So check that before kickoff, but I do believe that he's going to play in this game. And look, the Rams defense has kind of been a little susceptible to opposing tight ends this year, allowing 16.1 DraftKings points per game to opposing tight ends. Now 4K here, he's really cheap. We really don't need a whole lot for him to meet value. Again, a low-priced option to stack up with Russ Wilson, or just even get a little more contrarian. If you're going to roll out a heavy stack on the Rams side with Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and maybe even someone like Darrell Henderson, well, you're going to have to save a little bit of money throughout the rest of your lineup. Gerald Everett, Freddie Swain, and even Alex Collins, who I'll touch on next, I think are all great low-priced options. And then the last player we got there is Alex Collins. You know, I've touched on Chris Carson quite a bit throughout this video. I just don't know how much I trust him heading into Thursday, especially battling that neck injury, missed practice on Tuesday. Certainly not a good sign heading into this Thursday matchup. I kind of hope he does play though, just because we'll likely get Collins at much lower ownership, and he basically split carries and snaps with Carson last week and played much better than Carson, was a lot more efficient, and finished with 15.8 DraftKings points. Look, if Collins gets us 15 DraftKings points at 3.2K, he's smashing his value. It's a backup running back though, so do note that. But I think that's going to be something that we kind of see here going forward. Alex Collins getting more involved in this Seattle offense. All right, everyone, that is going to wrap up the video here for today. As always, thank y'all for taking the time out of your day to watch these videos. Don't forget to like this video here, subscribe to the Mayo Media Network. Like I said, they got football content coming out Monday through Sunday, all season long, and you don't want to miss out on any of that. For you podcast people, you can head on over to the Apple Pods or Spotify, find all the content there, and leave a 5-star review while you're at it. And again, for those of you who want to sign up for PrizePicks, make sure you use code MMN upon sign up for up to a $100 match deposit. But let's enjoy this Thursday night game here, folks. Probably one of the best we'll see all season long. I'm out of here.